We're live for the latest edition of Nick Valencia Lab. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Nick Valencia. I'm an independent journalist, and I'm the host of this whole thing. Thank you guys, everybody who's been following along with our journey, following along with our reporting. We have a great show to bring you today. It's been over a week since we last went live, if you can believe it. Last time we were live here, we were joined by an immigration attorney who was talking about all the issues that she's seeing in Los Angeles. Today, we are going to focus on going back to school and education and a variety of other things, but we're going to start with education. Joining us later today in a matter of a couple minutes here is going to be Juliana Uturbey. She is a Teacher of the Year, and she has a lot to say about the impact that ICE raids are having on the return to school. Many of you guys know that we were in Utah last week exploring stories that we had been researching. What took us there was news of a family, a mother who's on the run, who has been targeted by the same ICE agent that took her husband, that took her son. We interviewed her on the run, and she had a lot to say. Probably one of the biggest takeaways was that God doesn't separate families. God is not here to pull families apart and rip them apart. He's here to put them together. That was what she told us in a really emotional interview. So we'll have that story coming out for you in probably the next couple of weeks. On Monday, we put out a story about teachers and students, Latino students, who are scared to go back to school, back to fear. And we interviewed a family just outside of Salt Lake City who has 3 kids, all of them school-age children. The oldest, 15 years old. She's a sophomore. She's having a difficult time going back to school. And so is the mom. Part of what they're concerned about is not coming home after they go, drop their kids off at school. Late last year, it all started with the executive orders. Sensitive Locations Act was basically ripped apart. And what that did was it put a bright line of protections on places like hospitals, like churches, like schools. It was a not so silent signal to immigration and customs enforcement officers not to come into these places because they're hands off. Now, agents are being told to operate under common sense. And what's common sense for one person is not common sense for another. And what we are seeing now is incidents like we saw in Southern California yesterday at Arleta High School, where a special needs student had a long-range gun, a high-powered assault rifle pointed at them because of a matter of mistaken identity. I had a conversation yesterday based off some of my reporting that I put out with somebody who asked me if Latinos who were documented, people who have been born in this country, if they were being targeted as well. The answer, in short, is yes. And if we are to take the conservative mindset and sort of matter of approach here, one case is too many. We've seen conservatives point this out in incidents of violence towards Americans committed by undocumented immigrants. We saw the Laken Riley Act rush through Congress because of what happened to a Georgia student, that grisly crime that happened that should have never taken place. And conservatives used that as sort of a political launching point to get into why illegal immigrants shouldn't be in this country. Okay, so if we're using that mindset and that logic, that one case is too much, then let's apply this here to Latinos being caught up in this persecution of our community. One case of an American being caught up in these raids is too much. And we've seen multiple cases. You may ask yourself, what is the circumstances surrounding these cases? In some instances, it is people standing up to suspected law enforcement, to federal agents who have come to explicitly target a certain individual for apprehension or detention. In other cases, like we saw yesterday, it's simply a case of mistaken identity. We've seen lawyers scooped up in Santa Ana. We've seen individuals who are American citizens born in this country detained in East LA. We've seen people held for hours, for days, and released, even though they're pleading to these federal agents that they are American citizens. And it does not seem to matter. It does not seem to matter to a lot of people. And part of me is discouraged because I wonder if this is happening because the majority of the country supports it. I know that a lot of people did not vote. I know a lot of people who were registered voters did not show up to the polls and decided not to cast their ballot. There were people who were on this mindset of our former president, Joe Biden, giving him the moniker of Genocide Joe. They sat out. There were people that saw a choice between the lesser of two evils. They sat out. And I ask myself, really, when I start to think, maybe this majority of this country does support what's happening, this action against people that look like me, because if this was done in good faith, then those who are currently in detention right now wouldn't all just look like me and you, potentially. They would reflect the actual demographics of undocumented immigrants in this country. And instead, it just looks like a bunch of brown faces. And so I ask myself, if this is being done in good faith, if there is merit behind the Trump administration's edict for mass deportations, and whether or not this really is to go after the criminals, like we heard the president say, or if this is to go after the people of color, if this simply is to whitewash this country. I truly believe that the darker your skin is in this world, the harder society makes it for you. So whether that means you're an Afro-Latino or somebody that was born in the continent of Africa, whether that means if you're just somebody who's a dark-skinned American, that comes with a range of suspicions. That comes with a range of racism, prejudice, that exists in this country. And if you deny racism, if you deny prejudice, if you are so ignorant to suggest that that sort of stuff is not happening in this country, this platform is not for you. We're here to call out the bigotry in this country. We're here to call out people that are standing on the sidelines in silence watching this happen. Because today it is the undocumented criminal. But tomorrow, and already we've seen this happening, it's the American citizen also caught up in this. We've seen the Trump administration expand their immigration detention infrastructure. That clearly is a signal that they're going to have to, that they're wanting to ramp up these raids. That clearly is a not so silent, what do you call it, a dog whistle to their supporters that they plan on going after more people like they have already. And perhaps their bandwidth is going to get bigger. We saw this, what the president calls a big, beautiful bill. We saw all of this, tens of millions of dollars. They now have more funding, immigration and customs enforcement, than the Marines, than some branches of our military. Everything that they need is now at their fingertips to go forward with their plan and their agenda. And so we're going to talk about all of that as it relates to education. We're going to talk about what is happening in the American education system, and if this is an explicit targeting to dismantle institutions in this country. We've seen the Trump administration and their supporters attack public health institutions. We've seen them go after education and try to dismantle it. And it really brings me back to a conversation that I had with a Venezuelan who was here on an asylum claim, who said that this reminded him of what was happening right now, a lot of the same country that he fled. What's next? Privatizations of our businesses here, of our companies. How much further can this go? Right now, it's education. What is next? We've seen President Trump single-handedly make a huge impact in dismantling the trust and confidence in our mainstream media institutions. I left that institution. I'm now here on my own. And what is clear to me is that that carryover has happened from mainstream to independence. And now there is a healthy dose of skepticism for all of journalism. People decide to do their own research, whatever that means to them, and they end up entirely misled. They end up in echo chambers, they end up being siloed off and being told that they're not wrong. And sometimes all people need to hear is from someone else that they believe in them and they're off to the races, whether or not they're moving in good faith or not. We're here trying to move in good faith. We're here trying to highlight the injustices going on in our community, trying to underscore and highlight what has been happening to not just Latinos in this country, but to progressives in this country. We've seen activists who have stood up to the president's authoritative wing. We've seen them detained and charges later dropped. Trumped up charges that are later dismissed, with a district attorney that was potentially or is potentially trying to gain notoriety and the attention of all the wrong people. And here we are in this country here on August 12, 2025, with a great amount of concern, a great amount of worry of just how much further this can go and where this can delve off into. And we want to talk about all this all. One of the things also that was a takeaway from our reporting trip in Utah was that this isn't just impacting Latinos. It's impacting everyday Americans who were born in this country and whose skin happens to be brown. We walked into the Azteca Market, the Azteca Plaza, and I went live from there. And what I saw were dozens and dozens of businesses. This is basically like a flea market type area where it's very active on the weekends, except now, under these circumstances, it's not. People are not going in. So I interviewed one of the shops there was a candy shop, right? A lot of Mexican candies. If you guys are from Southern California, if you've ever been to Mexico, you know what I'm talking about, right? The little Rosita things, the chiclets, the tamarindo candies. Before the Trump administration, the shop owner told me that he made roughly $7,000 a month. Since Trump has taken office, that same shop owner makes less than $1,000 a month. And it's gotten so bad that he's put most of his company on credit. And this month, he tells us, is going to be his last month. That piece is going to be released next Monday. He wasn't alone. Some of you guys know that jewelry is a way for undocumented immigrants to build credit. You may know this now, and maybe, it's no mistake now that why you see so many, like where I'm from in Highland Park and Eagle Rock, you see a lot of jewelry shops. It's because it's a way for undocumented immigrants to build credit, getting a really expensive piece of jewelry and, sort of starting to build credit up. So we saw some of these jewelry stops and stands inside the Azteca Market in Utah. And the watch repairman said he's lucky if he makes $20 a day. $20 a day. That's what we're talking about. We ran across 3 teen girls who nonchalantly told us that their uncle, they're all cousins, that their uncle had just been detained and taken in a raid that was not intended for him, but he just happened to be there. And so he got caught up in it. And now he's in Mexico. All of those stories we're going to explore and we're going to talk about. But let's see if we can get into our discussion today. I think I saw Juliana join here. And as you guys are joining more, Juliana, we're going to bring you in here and we're going to start talking about all these issues that are important to you. And we'll see here. This is still, let me see if I can add a co-host right here. All right. And thank you guys for contributing. I didn't promote this here, so I'm just really grateful you guys showed up. Here we go. Uturbey. There we go. And we'll invite her in, and we'll wait for Juliana to join. Really excited to start this conversation. We interviewed one of her peers and her colleagues named John Arthur, who had a lot to say about, hey, Juliana, hey, how are you?
Hi.
Nice fast. Wow. Let me scoot my camera back here. Hey, so why don't we start in? More people will join as we have this conversation. Why don't you give us a quick introduction about who you are and, some of your background here and what makes you so passionate about this issue of education in our country?
Absolutely. I'm trying to figure out what happened to my camera.
You might have accidentally put in the upper right-hand corner, you might have accidentally clicked that and turned the camera off, but we can hear you,
Well, this is the fun part about, joining a new app. I think Substack is so cool, but I'm in the process of figuring it out. So thank you all for your patience.
All right, let's see. What might have you done? I think that you hit the camera in the upper right and disabled your video. I think you did that. Uh-oh, let's try to invite you back. Here, maybe if we drop you off and invite you back, your video will come through. Here we go. We'll invite you back. And maybe? There we go.
There we go. Yes, so thanks for having me on. My name is Juliana Uturbey. I'm the 2021 National Teacher of the Year. A couple days ago, you had the great opportunity to hang out with John Arthur, the Utah Teacher of the Year.
He's so well-spoken. My gosh. And if you guys missed that piece, John Arthur, he was 2021 Utah Teacher of the Year. And he had a lot to say about what teachers are, sort of the responsibilities that are being asked of them this year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. So my teaching background, I have taught in Las Vegas and in Arizona for the last 15 years. And I'm not in the classroom anymore, but my role now is to support teachers nationwide. And I remember teaching in 2010 in Arizona with the Show Me Your Papers laws with SB 1070. By day, I would go and teach. And then by night, I would join human rights movements and organizations to help build community capacity to protect each other.
So let's start there because that has come up, that legislation has come up a lot in my reporting the last couple of weeks, SB 1070 in Arizona, as has Prop 187, that bill from, I guess it wasn't a bill, it was, voted on in 1994. What was that like? What was the expectation for teachers? And just what kind of environment was it for you to teach in and under those circumstances?
Look, it feels at some point it feels so far away, and then now it feels like it was yesterday, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I had the great privilege of working with a lot of really active activists who were really connected to what community needed, and I really learned a lot from them. And so part of the analysis of this was when we militarized the border in around 2001, what we saw was the border being constructed from Texas to California, leaving Arizona open because the Sonoran Desert is the harshest, both the coldest and the hottest. Thinking, okay, the folks that are going to come through are going to be the toughest folks, and those are the kind of immigrants we want. The ones that are here, we're going to pass a series of legislations and policies to slowly form a culture of attrition, of fear. So,
Mm.
ironically, the first one in that was an English only law that basically made it illegal to have bilingual education in Arizona. Since then, there's been a lot of workarounds and there's bilingual programs that are flourishing, but it's taken a lot of community resistance. After that law was the law that you can receive medical emergency care if you couldn't prove your documentation.
Cutting
Then
off undocumented immigrants from public services like everyone else is afforded the
and then
right.
it was driver's license, and slowly and surely it just kept getting more and more heightened until 2010 happened. And at that time, that was Governor Brewer, and most of her cabinet was private prisons executives. And so you see the simultaneous growth of detention centers for profit along with these policies that are criminalizing people. We all know that immigration is not a criminal act. It is not
I would like to
illegal.
think that all people know that, Juliana, but I am not so sure. And I got into it with a friend who voted for Trump last night. There's the lack of compassion now. Compassion is turned into a sort of dirty word. And it was very clear to me in this conversation I had over Messenger with my friend yesterday that they believe that compassion is leaves them vulnerable to I don't know what that compassion is something that can be used against people. Are you
Mhm.
seeing that sort of same thing happen and unfold? I'm kind of discouraged today.
I know. I feel it. I feel it. I don't, I think where I choose to focus is on the folks who are doing something about this, right? The folks who are, I was just last night on a teacher training, a virtual teacher training from some teachers in California who were talking about how they built a whole community web to protect their students coming from school. Just a couple of days ago, we had two
Wow.
students detained outside of a South Phoenix school, right? I think that they were released, but it's nebulous. We don't really know. And so you have teachers rising up and saying, no, we're not going to treat our students this way. We're not going to allow this to happen on campus. If I need to add fighting to this, like fighting not physically, but protecting my students on
Yeah.
this physical level to the list of the things I do as a teacher, then I'm going to do it.
I think
And
some
that's what I
teachers
hear from
are
teachers.
prepared. I think some teachers are prepared to go that length. And in fact, John, he was like, if there's a fire drill, I walk out with my kids. If there's an earthquake, I huddle. If there's a shooting drill, an active shooter, I'm prepared to take a bullet for my student. If somebody comes in as an ICE agent, they're going to take me with them as well. And I read a comment under the story, and it's like, oh, wow, you're basically championing pushing back against law enforcement. I don't see, but there's people that see it like that. Like they see it as if this is wrong for teachers, that teachers should just, who love and care for their students, should just sort of fall flat on their back and allow these agents to come in because that's their job and they're just doing this job. I really have a problem with this law and order mentality. So I think I need to lean into the hope that you're seeing in your communities.
Absolutely. As educators, we believe in the notion that it's our civic duty to teach our students to question power and to question fairness, right? And to lead with that. I think that our students know right from wrong. And like you were saying about the Venezuelan man who's talking about how familiar this is to the country he left,
Yeah.
this is how we stop that, right? I think about that book on tyranny, and the first part of that book is just not complying. We don't comply to immoral, inhuman laws, right? And as educators, I vowed to protect my students, and I will, and their families. And I think part of that is really figuring out how to transform to the greatest degree possible our fear into preparedness. Like John said, we treat this like this is a locked campus, a fire drill, a stranger danger on campus, right? There are things as an educator that I know to be true. One, it is none of my business whether my students are documented or undocumented. Schools have no right to ask, and we need to be really clear. Last night in this webinar, they were talking about, yes, it's great to know your rights, and maybe in 2010 that was enough. Now it's not enough to know your rights, because now you have to be prepared to defend them and defend them from agents who you don't know if they're ICE, if they're DHS, if they're FBI, if they're CIA. We have a right as citizens and as residents of this country to know who is being approached us. Anybody can buy a police badge on Amazon nowadays and pose as them. So coming from Arizona, how do I know they're not Minutemen? How do I know that you are the law and order that you say you are? And that has to earn my trust as a citizen.
How do we know they're not Proud Boys that are, masquerading as suspected federal agents? We saw the same tactics used by these white nationalist groups, getting in the back of Penske trucks, U-Hauls in Operation Trojan Horse. Very similar optics in Southern California, where federal agents used a Penske truck, used it as sort of like a ruse to get people to come as a job offer, and then descended and started rounding people up. You said a lot of things here that really jogged my memory. I remember when George H.W. Bush was asked during a primary debate if education was a right for everybody and whether or not he believed undocumented immigrants had the right to education. And he said yes. The same sort of person from the Republican Party who was championed as a hero and a true conservative, if you hear that come out of someone's mouth today, it's like they're labeled a liberal or part of the problem. But wait a minute, like it wasn't so long ago that Republicans were okay with this. What happened? The other thing that you talk about is not subscribing to immoral or inhumane laws. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because for me, I really try to move under the spiritual construct, because the man-made one told us it was okay to own people 200 years ago. There are so many laws that are immoral and inhumane that am I supposed to subscribe to them because this is the rule of law? Or is it, let's use our rational critical thinking and say, this is wrong. On the basic human level, this is wrong.
Absolutely. And I think we stand in our conviction about how people deserve to be treated, and inalienable rights, right? Inalienable rights. These are things that are part of the values of who we are. And if we allow politics to change that, then how deeply rooted were we in those values to begin with, right? And so I think you fight for what you love. Like, I love this country. I love the opportunity it gives immigrants, right? And I'm willing to fight for that. And my fighting might look much different than a lot of activists on the grounds, but my fighting is important because it reminds us that education is the pathway. Education is the equalizer. That's why folks are scared. Because look at what's happening with Latinos graduating, we're one of the ethnic groups that has the most entrepreneurial adventures, right? Like we are hustlers. We make it in this country, and we bring other people with us. That's intimidating for folks who thrive on an individualistic lens of, toppling over whoever you need to topple over to get whatever you want. We don't subscribe to that. And so I think that, yes, it's intimidating, the value and the power that Latinos have. And at the same time, we have to really root ourselves in community organizing right now to be able to sustain hope and to be able to keep each other safe. Because yes, as a teacher, I would do everything within my physical and professional power to keep my students feeling safe in their schools.
That's right. And we've seen community defense organizations sort of fill the hole where they've seen local law enforcement fail. I just got back from Salt Lake City, where I counted at least 7 different sheriff's departments that signed up for 287G. And that's effectively deputizing them into becoming or aiding immigration and customs enforcement agents when they show up in that county. And so I want to pivot here a little bit and talk something that was really interesting to me was the Sensitive Locations Act and the repeal of that in January, and just what kind of impact that's having on schools nationwide. We could talk about Utah or however that's applied to you, but I think it's really important to sort of drill down on this. Can you explain to us what the repealing of the Sensitive Locations Act has meant for educators, and where educators like yourself, Moms Rising, where the mission is to try to remedy that right now?
Look, the strategy that has been employed is to cause confusion and fear in public education. We saw this with the repeal of the $7 billion that impacted across the country really important programs, summer programs for kids. So this is part of the strategy, right? To be confused and to live in fear. Repealing the Sensitive Locations Act is detrimental to schools. Because what that means is that we are now vulnerable to these ICE raids. And that means that going to school is not a sacred act anymore, just like going to your church isn't anymore. And so, again, coming back to these values of who we are as US citizens, who we are as a country. And so what this means is several things. It means that schools need to make a decision about how they're going to respond in the case that ICE does come to the school. Our principals, front office staff members, are they ready to look and demand a warrant? And look at a warrant and make sure it's an actual warrant that's actually been signed by a judge, right? And even so, if they are, what are their procedures? Are they going to give a child up? I certainly hope not, right? So we need to be prepared by having press, ready on speed dial to call, because we know ICE is less likely to act when there's a lot of press, because they're
We know
doing
that this administration hates a light shown on what they're doing wrong.
They wouldn't be masked if they wanted that attention, right? We need to know that legal counsel for our school district is ready to respond immediately, right? We need to have a way of communicating privately and safely with all of the families and all of the schools in the neighborhood. We need to have plans in place, and we need them today. We need to make sure that school drop off and pickup is orchestrated in a way that is calm and safe, and that we have extra staff on deck to make sure there aren't unmarked cars around. But this is asking a lot of teachers. Teachers will rise up. We will do these things. But I do wonder and worry about this, how long we can sustain this kind of energy, right? But if we go back to what I was telling you about 1070, the laws of attrition, this is designed to slowly wear us down. And so I think where we don't wear down is by being really grounded and connected to community.
That's the remedy to be able to put in the long fight. I find myself, as an individual walking around with my bare feet on the grass outside of my backyard to sort of literally try to ground myself, because this really is the long haul. I get discouraged, and I started by saying that earlier, but I really think journalism, independent journalism, matters more than ever to be able to shine a light on all of this stuff as we're seeing what we're seeing happen in the media landscape. It takes people like me and others to try to, not lose sight of what is happening. So many people drop this sort of a news story of immigration right after our strike with Iran, which really fires our team up here to try to put a spotlight on what's happening and to drill back down. We're already seeing the impact of what the Trump administration has done and the dismantling of education. Part of the reason why we went to Utah was because we read a KSL radio piece that included quotes from people in the Jordan School District about kids not showing up to school. You heard your colleague, John, in our report talk about kids showing up, putting their heads on their desk. They get asked what's going on. My brother, my sister, my parents were deported. Tell us already about the real world impact that is having on schools today because of one man's policy.
Yes, and the compliance of many, right? It's his policy and the compliance of many. And so I think that the impact is detrimental, right? We know the emotional, economic, and physical impact of being separated from your family, and especially as a child. Living in fear is toxic for our children. So this is why the remedy is to really work with all children to talk about, one, that this is a civil case issue. Being undocumented in this country is a civil issue, not a criminal case issue, unless we allow people to criminalize us. And that's what's happening, right? So
that's what's happening. That's what we saw in the first Trump administration. The act of crossing became a felony. It became a criminal offense, which led to the family separation. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go on.
No, you're good. I think that it's really important just to be clear with children. I've been thinking a lot about how do we navigate these conversations with children, but we've gotten to a point where we can't afford not to have them, right? So what we saw in the Roosevelt School District a couple of days ago is ICE agents were walking with two children. The video is harrowing. Like, you see this little tiny child with a backpack and this big agent next to them. And what they're doing is, because they have to have plausible cause, what they're doing is they're engaging in conversation with children. as they're walking to school. And if they can get them in conversation, then they can ask them questions enough to racial profile to see if they have an accent, to ask them where their parents are, right? And our children are normalized to talk to people, right? If an elder comes to you, you talk to them. No, we can't do that anymore. This is one of the points that the California teachers were talking about yesterday, about saying, no, we have to teach our children to defend their rights. Know your rights and defend their rights. And that was so pivotal for me to hear them, because what's happening in LA is what's going to be happening later if we don't figure out a way to build a different system.
And if you guys are just joining us, we're joined now by the 2021 Teacher of the Year, Juliana Uturbey. A lot of great stuff, a lot of great insights. And I want to ask you this next question, partially for our audience, partially for myself. I have a 7-year-old. I have a 4-year-old. They're having some big feelings. They're back in school already. They've been back in school. They see that daddy is reporting on people that look like them. They see that daddy is coming back, and I cry a lot,
Yeah.
because of what I see. And I'm not ashamed to cry in front of my kids. I don't know how to really talk to them
Yeah.
about what's going on. And so if you could help me, how do I talk to my 7-year-old?
I know.
How do we talk to our small children about these really big issues that they may not really understand, but that I'm so sorry. They may not understand, but that really impact
Yeah.
that. I'm
Don't
so
worry, Nick.
sorry.
I'm known to cry on stages when I give keynotes. Probably 8 out of 10 times I cry because I'll read this book right here, Dreamers, Soñadores. So this is my first recommendation.
Okay.
It is a beautiful children's book. It's Soñadores by Juji
Soñadores.
Morales.
Okay.
Dreamers. It's in English and Spanish, and it just talks about this one mom's migration journey. I think that the first thing we do is we value and we acknowledge our feelings. We're scared. Adults are scared too. Adults, I think about, oh, Nick, I'm thinking about so many things, but I think about my own upbringing. I was born in Colombia, height of civil war.
I
And
gotta fan myself down here. I gotta cool off.
when,
I'm sorry. Okay,
no,
you grew up in Colombia. I'm so sorry to cut you off.
yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing your honest feelings, because like, if us who have privilege in this country, we're documented, we know how to navigate this world. If we're feeling this way, I can only imagine what our undocumented community is feeling, right? So I grew up in the height of the Civil War, and somehow my parents shielded us from this, right?
Wow.
But at the same time, as an adult, I always could sense that something was a little bit off when I was a child, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And so knowing what I know now, I wish that I would have known a little bit more about what was happening, right? And so one of the great strategies that we have when working with young children and really heavy, difficult things is letting them ask us questions, right? Where is their heart and mind on this, right? Having conversations that remind them that just because they're Latino or just because they're brown does not mean there's anything wrong with them, that folks are manipulating that part about us to make us scapegoats. Who's profiting off of criminalizing brown and black people in this country?
The private prison industrial complex, Core Civic, Geo, places like that get $30,000 a pop for these migrants. I was talking to my executive producer. I shouldn't say these migrants, for people, right? For migrants. I was talking to my executive producer, and he was telling me about Americans that have been held for 14 days and then let go. We have a theory that might be the amount of time that they could legally hold somebody and also still get the money for holding somebody, because it's all about the money. You got to follow the money. They teach you, Woodward and Bernstein taught us long ago, follow the money, you'll figure out the issue. That's the solution right there. And we see people profiting off of this broken immigration system. So I really get upset when people say, well, why didn't they do it the right way? Well, the right way for who? For people that are like lighter skin complexion than me?
Well, I heard a lawyer talking about that. He said if they really cared about people getting their residency the right way, then why are they waiting outside of their court hearings where they're doing it the right way to scoop them up and deport
Why are
them?
they going to their workplaces where they're contributing and adding to the economy here?
Why
right?
are they using the IRS data if we're not paying our taxes? There's not logical. And I think that that's what we teach children, that hate is not logical. but love and care is the antidote to violence, right? I think that was Bell Hooks who said that. Somebody more important than me said that. But
That sounded great from you too.
the antidote to violence is care. So what we teach our students and our children is to care. And we tell them that you caring and you thinking about this is enough. And then we ask them what they want to do about it. You know, I've had similar situations with students, and they want to make posters, and then we design and decorate our house and our classroom with posters about nobody being illegal, right? Kids have a voice. We have to listen to them, and in age-appropriate ways, we have to help them echo out that voice. We have to find books. Go love a librarian, go to the library, ask them for the books. There's books out there that fill our conviction with the humanity that we need to survive this, right? And
Talk to us about that book again, if you could point the camera there. What's it called? Soñadores?
Soñadores, it's
Sonadores. Oh, okay.
yeah, so it's dreamers in
Dreamers.
English. And this is written by Juji Morales. I actually read this during my keynotes, and I read it to teachers, sometimes teachers who are Latino, oftentimes teachers who are not Latino, to help them understand our humanity. Like, I'm not here to prove my humanity to you. If you see something different and you're not building a bridge to see my humanity, I got to do it through art. But I'm not here to prove to you that I'm a worthy human being. I'm here to show you that we all have this essence that connects us. And if we're not seeing that, then we're not well, right? Like all these folks who are supporting MAGA and Trump and all this stuff, they're not well. I'm not sure if I feel bad for them.
No, hurt people. You know, that's an article that I wrote last week. It came so clear to me in talking, because I talked to a lot of Latino Trump supporters in general. They're in my orbit. And I feel like the ones that are the most rabid Trump supporters, they still talk to me because whatever, they want to have a connection somehow, or they actually respect me. But I see that they're hurt themselves and they want to inflict this pain on others. You know, and I talk about often the two types of Latinos. Really, it could be applied for everyone. It's the one that's gone through the struggle and thinks that builds character and wants everyone to go through that pain just like they did. And then there's the other Latino who I fall in under this camp. I've gone through the struggle and the pain, and I want nothing more than to keep and shield and protect my children or others from going through the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So there's plenty of hurt people who don't hurt people. Right. And being hurt does not justify your hurt towards others. Right. And so I think that yes, Latinos, we're not a monolith. We are diverse thinkers. We come from different experiences. You'll never find two Colombianos who are the same, two Mexicanos that are the same, right? We have different experiences and we need to validate them. But what I'm really concerned with in our community is this access piece, right? A lot of Latinos that I know that supported Trump under the guise of economic opportunity. Are we willing to step over our fellow community members for economic opportunity? False promised economic opportunities? Because I know I'm going to the grocery store and I'm having a heart attack every time I go down an aisle.
Oh my God.
Right? And he when he won, when he was determined that he was our president, he said that he won based on the cost of eggs. What a betrayal. What a betrayal to our entire country. The eggs and food are so expensive.
I mean, groceries here for a family of four, they could be upwards of $300, $400 sometimes here at our house, right? And we're not going to Trader Joe's. We're not going to, Whole Foods or whatever, what's the other one? Sprouts. We're shopping at, where everyone else shops at, and like, how do you vote for privileges as a Latino for Trump? You're voting for these privileges. And then if you're claiming to move in good faith, you see what's happening in this country and then doing all of these acrobatics and bending to try to be like, oh, well, wait, but what this? And, but he's going to just wait on the tariffs and wait, the economy is going to get better. And it's like, when are we going to bring this back to education? When are we going to realize that kids only have one childhood? And we're fucking with it right now with what we're doing. We are breaking the childhood and the innocence of so many kids. Before you joined, you heard me talk about what happened at Arleta High School and a special needs kid getting a long gun pointed at them, And I talked in my conversation yesterday with a Trump voter. They said, well, let's investigate these individual circumstances and see when these Americans that are detained or what was that circumstance surrounding. There's no justification for pointing a long gun at a kid outside of a school.
No.
Unless that kid is pointing a gun back, right? Like these are just innocent kids going to school. And so I worry about that. What's the remedy there for trying to protect the innocents? You talk about your own lived experience and going through a civil war and then growing up as an adult. How do we protect the kids that are going through this stuff right now?
I think that it is a natural and normal thing to want to protect children. I mean, I'm a teacher. I want
Yeah.
to protect children. I think we need to be conscious of age appropriate ways to be real with children. They're not dumb. They know. They need to know their rights. They need to know what to do in case of an emergency. And it breaks my heart. It puts un nudo en mi garganta, like a knot in my throat to have to do this. But as educators, as parents, as family members, community members, we need to be honest with our students or in our children that they're not playing by the rules. They're not respecting policy and law that is designed to protect people. And so what we need to do is figure out ways to protect ourselves. And it's hard, Nick, because it's not the answer I'd want to give you. I want to give you a magical land where kids can go and they don't have to deal with this. But the truth of the matter is that that's just not our reality. It's not a reality. Maybe in some places in this country that don't look like my neighborhoods or where I grew up or where I teach, but that's our reality. And so I think we need to be really firm with that and hopeful. I think that that's the key, right? Is care and hope. Kids respond very well to care and hope. And so what does it mean to talk to a 5-year-old about not talking to somebody that scares you on the street? I know we do it together, but I don't know how we do it.
We talk a lot about in this household being kind to people, being a leader and what that looks like. Leaders create other leaders. They don't create followers. So like if you see somebody that is sitting by themselves at lunch, go sit with them, be
Yeah.
the kid. Like I am really with my children, they have everything. They're so smart. They're so beautiful. They're so kind. They se ponen travieso también, okay? Like they're not like these sweet angels all the time. But I think, to lead with love and tolerance and to instill these values in them, I think it all starts in the home. And I don't fear that when my kids go out there that they're gonna make the day harder for the kids that they're around. When they come back home, instead of asking them how their day was, I ask them, did anyone make you sad today? Did you make anyone sad? Did anyone make you happy today? Did you make anyone happy? And those questions usually lead to a pretty insightful conversation about my kid's day and about who was mean to them or who wasn't or who was kind. One of the things that we dealt with overnight, and I'm hypersensitive to the persecution of our people right now, Ricardo, my son, he's getting made fun of for his hair by other students, right?
Mm.
And my son is like objectively speaking, he's like one of the most handsome kids, right? And like, so
Sure.
I think like Ricky, don't ever let anyone make you feel bad about how you are or what you look like, and go tell a teacher if you feel
Yeah.
like you're being made fun of. And so I really commend people like you, Juliana. I know you're not in the classroom right now, but you're there, right? Your community, you're tied in, you hear and you're
Yeah.
hanging out with teachers every single day, I'm sure. I really commend you guys for everything that you're being asked to do. You're part best friend, part counselor, part therapist. You're part now protector, part lawyer. You have the general counsel of your school district on speed dial in some cases, according to John Arthur. I mean, like, what do you guys need right now? How can we as a community help the educators in this country?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about this concept of collective wellness. Teachers need their community to be well in order for us to be well too, right? So I think that we need families that can be allies and have privilege to say, yes, I can come to school half an hour early and, do a couple laps around the school to look for unmarked cars.
Wow.
Yes, I can help establish a phone tree. Yes, I can stay after here and do know your rights and emergency plans for families, right? These are things teachers can facilitate, but we need parents who are not afraid, who have the privilege to be able to do this work. Every time that I'm disheartened by the ICE raids, there's 5 videos of allies standing up to masked, armed men who are not afraid to run them over in their cars.
I think about the Lululemon mom in Northern California that stood up there in the Home
Yeah.
Depot parking lot, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if she was a mom, but she was wearing Lululemon, you know? I think you remember the video.
And I think about your kids, right? I think about Fred Rogers saying, look for the helpers. Let's teach our kids to be helpers, right? So if we know that there's a family who's afraid to leave their house, let's organize to get them some groceries. Let's organize to send them some games. Let's figure out a way to support the people nearest us and go deep into community, our local community, because that's what teachers need. Our teachers need our community to say, hey, we got you. We support you on this. We know that these are scary times. What do you need? And we need teachers to know where to point families. So John and I are actually going to organize a webinar at the end of the month. We're going to do it on the 20th of August around 4:00, designed for teachers to give them
Four
things
o'clock
to
when?
think about.
Eastern or Mountain Time? We
Oh,
gotta, yeah.
Mountain
We want to
Time.
promote you.
Mountain
We
Time.
want you to plug your stuff here.
I just joined Substack, but I'll put a flyer on as soon as we lock in a lawyer who's going to join us to answer some teachers' questions. But my first thing is go look for the organizations in your community that are doing this work and go support them and ask how your children can support them. Because I guarantee you, your children will feel better if they're doing something about it. We can't just let them sit in fear. As a teacher, I learned that the anxious brain can't be anxious when it's creating something. So let's give our children art projects to do to express how they feel about this. Let's be really active in it. I'm scared too, Nick. I'm disheartened. My heart's broken, but we can't stay there and we can't let our kids stay there.
You said something. I wonder, is that why I feel so much better when I'm coloring? Because the anxious brain can't be anxious when it's creative, right? Like we color a lot. When Ricky and Ellie come home, we sit here because that's what my dad did with me. My dad, like one of the things that I remember, I mean, he was the old school Latino dad that really didn't take much interest in me until I hit puberty. But one of the things I remember when I was a kid was that he would sit down and color with me. And so that is something that was one of the good things that he left with me that I try to give on to my kids. You've been so gracious with your time, Juliana. And for those of you who joined in the middle of this conversation, this is National Teacher of the Year, Juliana Uturbey. She is a force of nature, as we've learned in the last 30 minutes here with her. She's the 2021 Teacher of the Year. And they've got an event coming up on August 20th. She's going to be with John Arthur, who is the 2021 Utah Teacher of the Year. We'll give you more information on that. As we wrap this up, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is important to know or anything that you would like to talk about? Now's your chance. You've said so much and you've given me hope here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Nick, I think I want to thank you. I think I want to thank you because the work of journalism is so important. It's the backbone of our democracy, right? And you've taken such a leap to leave CNN, to leave comfort, to be able to pursue news in a way that uplifts your community and is honest and truthful. And so I think we got to think about more ways to bridges between journalists and teachers. And I just have a lot of gratitude. And I think that the bravery that we feel, it's contagious from each other. So thank you for spreading our stories and thank you for encouraging us to dig really deep in these really difficult times. There is a through to this. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know when we'll get there, but there is a through to this. And we're going to raise strong, resilient, creative, take no bullshit children that come out of this.
God bless you so much. El pueblo salva al pueblo. El pueblo
Así
salva al
es,
pueblo.
así es. Muchas gracias. Thank you all
No, al
for listening.
contrario, qué amable eres, muy tierna. Thank you so much.
Chao.
We should do this. We should have done this in Spanglish.
Para la próxima.
Juliana, you could just hit end. I'm going to stay here for a little while longer and
All
just
right.
wrap
Bye,
up
everybody.
a little bit. Thank you so much to Juliana Uturbey, National Teacher of the Year 2021. What a conversation. I started joining you guys today feeling, discouraged. I would love to come on and say like, hey, look, I've got this sort of tempered approach and I'm always, one speed. One of the greatest gifts I have is that I'm emotional. You guys saw it there as I teared up in the middle of it. I started crying because this is heavy stuff. Sometimes that emotion can be a detriment, and sometimes my mind is not my friend. And today, after seeing the stuff that I saw in Utah, after seeing the little kids' faces that I interviewed that are scared to go back to school, after my conversation yesterday with my friend who voted for Trump, who basically told me that compassion is and vulnerability like leaves you vulnerable. Compassion and empathy is something that could be used against you. I woke up this morning thinking, where are we? Where are we as a country? Where are we as a society? That conversation right there with Juliana Uturbey reminded me that it takes a village to raise our kids. And before I work myself up and cry anymore, I just am so grateful that people are watching and people that are, really, this is a hard road. Juliana alluded to it, leaving the status of CNN. I have never felt comfortable in this region here of the United States. I've lived here for 19 years and I've never felt comfortable in the South. No matter what I've done, no matter what my title was, no matter how expensive a clothes I had on. But even in those moments, I was always able to think or say, my ego felt, I'm a CNN correspondent. They may be treating me like a wetback, but I'm a wetback in $1,000 suit. And now I don't have that. And it's been very, very difficult to navigate that as an independent journalist, to lose this status and to know that what I'm doing is sincerely moving in good faith and moving earnestly and trying to add value to the stream of life and trying to stand up for my community. Because you guys have heard me say it, if I get treated like this with all the privileges that I have, what are people without a voice being treated like? What are people that live in the shadows having to go through every single day? And so that's why we're doing this. And I'll leave you with this, guys. We're not just covering immigration. We're covering public health. And you guys may have seen that. I put out some reporting because of what happened, the shooting that happened at the CDC on Friday. We had planned and made plans to expand our coverage. We're a very small team. You guys know it's myself, my wife, and one of my best friends, Eric Sandoval, out of Los Angeles. We're going to be doing a lot more in this space. There is a through line between immigration and public health. We see pregnant women not going to their prenatal checkups because they're scared of getting scooped up in hospitals that used to be safe locations. We're seeing and hearing stories of cancer patients who are not going to go seek their cancer treatment because they're worried that they're going to get separated from their families and deported to a black site or somewhere that they may never know, a land that they're unfamiliar with. We're seeing the through line between public health and immigration, and this platform here, Nick Valencia News, we're going to be investigating that. We're going to be diving deeper into those themes and those issues. It's one of the institutions that the Trump administration is focusing on and trying to dismantle and trying to create and sow doubt and disillusionment, trying to rip down the confidence that we once had in these medical institutions. And ask yourself this, why? Why for a man who was responsible for Operation Warp Speed, who was one of the main players in getting the COVID vaccines rolled out in this country, why he never takes credit for them? One of the great human accomplishments, one of the great scientific achievements in our country. It's politics. This is not good faith. This is not moving in good faith as an administration. We're here to call out the bullshit. That's what we're doing. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you guys. This is real. This is authentic. We are unbought. We are unafraid, and we are unapologetic, man. That's the latest edition episode of Nick Valencia News. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We'll have much, much more ahead. Stay tuned.